Y'all, what's up, YouTube? This is your main man, Big Red, and I'm here with another response video. These is the people that been in prison and live over their time in prison, meaning they might have went to jail in the 1960s, and it's 2022, and they lived all the way until here and got out, and they still here with us. We gonna see how they look now.
People find it hard being locked indoors for a few weeks. Imagine what decades of incarceration can do to you. There are cases where people who were practically kids got released as elders into a world that was vastly different to the one they left when they were in prison.
Damn,
let's take a look
that's
at
crazy.
some people who have outlived the most insane
Prison real
prison
keep you
sentences
for a long
ever
time,
given.
hide you from the world. Like, you got people in there that's been down for years
Thomas
before I
Trantino.
was even born.
By his own admission, Thomas Trantino was a very sick and dangerous person. Born in 1938, he'd become a serious
What I
substance
tell you,
abuser
before I
at
was
just
even
14
born.
years old and had already spent 6 years behind bars by the age of 20.
Damn.
On one terrible night in August 1963, while heavily intoxicated, he took part in an altercation that ended in the demise of 2 policemen at Trantino's hands. Trantino turned himself in after 66 hours on the run, but claimed he didn't commit the crimes he'd been accused of. However, with all the evidence pointing to the contrary,
That's
he was
crazy,
soon
bro.
convicted of his alleged crimes.
You got a lot of people
Not
out
only
here.
that, the jury decided he deserved the death penalty.
We got a lot of
After being
people out here
committed
that's
in
innocent in prison.
1963, he sat on death row until 1971, when
Damn.
New Jersey abolished the death penalty. His sentence was then altered to life with eligibility for parole after 25 years. But being on death row turned this broken man into something of a writer and an artist.
Yeah,
Prison
will change you if you want to be changed.
I guess that's one
You know,
way to pass
but
the time.
at the same time,
2002, Trantino's parole was
it will
finally
hurt.
granted
It'll
after
break
he'd
you
spent
down
over
to the point that
38 years total in the
you don't
hole.
want to be in
He had
prison.
the
Nobody want to be in
longest serving
prison.
prisoner in the
You got
state of
innocent
New
people
Jersey.
in prison.
Long-term convictions aside,
You know, you got people
really
that's
would be
not
criminal
innocent, but at
not
the same
hitting those
time,
like and subscribe buttons.
prison would
Duh.
change
I put
you.
out new
You
videos
know,
every day
sometimes
to
it'll keep
satisfy
you a
your
dangerous
cravings
person
for
still.
facts and stories
Sometimes
alike.
it'll change
Any
you
objections?
that you don't want to
No?
be here no more. You want
All
to
in
change your
favor?
life.
We shall proceed on to the next
That's
item
crazy,
on the
bro.
court's agenda. More insane prison sentences. Ricky Jackson. Could you imagine losing nearly 40 years of your
40
life to a
years.
crime you didn't commit?
That you
Unbelievably,
look what I
that
just
nightmare
said, bro.
became Ricky Jackson's
You did
reality
all
back
these
in
years and you didn't even do the
1975.
crime.
At just 19 years old, Jackson and
19,
his friends
y'all.
Wiley and Ronnie Bridgman were convicted for a fatal attack on salesman Harry Franks. The entire case hinged on the witness statement.
I want y'all
of a
to comment,
13-year-old
bro.
named Eddie
How many
Vernon,
people that you
who
know
claimed he
that's
saw the boys
innocent,
commit the
that been
heinous
down for
crime.
15,
Aside
20
from that
years,
one
25
witness, there
years,
was
30
no other
years.
physical evidence to
You
suggest
feel me? That's
Jackson
really
or the
innocent.
Bridgman brothers were there. Jackson was initially given the death sentence, but luckily, several appeals and mistakes in paperwork spared him from the capital punishment.
You feel me?
Thank
Shit.
God it did, because in 2013, the star witness broke down in court and claimed the police had coerced him into falsely testifying.
Look,
It turned out Vernon
you
never
got
actually saw the attack.
Cops
In fact,
that's
he was on
forcing
a
this
school bus
man
a mile
to lie on
away
this
when it
young
all
man,
happened.
say he did
The
it.
shocking turn of events
Come
saw
on,
Jackson
bro, that's
exonerated in
crazy, bro.
2014, along with Wiley Bridgman.
Look, he been
Spent
gone
39
for 40
waiting
years.
for justice
He didn't
alongside
get out
Ronnie
until
Bridgman, who had been released in
2014, bro.
2003. The three are due to
2014,
receive a
bro,
payout
I was
of
in my
$18
20s,
million in
bro.
compensation for the decades they spent behind bars.
Come on,
If you were
bro.
in Jackson's shoes, do you think that cold hard cash would be enough to make up for half your life lost to prison? Let me know in the comments below.
Hell no, bro. I done lost 40 years of my
Johnson.
life.
The saying wrong place, wrong time is one that former convict Otis Johnson knows all too well. Back in 1975, Johnson was arrested for a crime he claims he
1975, bro.
never
Half of
committed.
it wasn't
On May
here,
5th,
bro.
As he was walking down the street, Johnson was stopped and searched by officers in Harlem, New York.
Minding
The
his own
officers alleged
business.
Otis fit the description of a man involved in
because
an alleged
I'm
shooting
black
of a
or I'm
police officer. The description only
white,
said the man was wearing a
Hispanic,
tan jacket.
I look like
That
the
was
other
enough to
person? Come
convince
on,
the
bro.
officers of Johnson's guilt.
I just seen
Somehow,
somebody
despite
walking
a
down the
glaring
street and
lack
just
of
wanted to
evidence or
fuck with
credible
him.
eyewitnesses, Johnson was sentenced to 25 years to life for the attack he was accused of. He got through the decades of incarceration by drawing on his previous training as a monk in Hong Kong. He set up various programs to teach meditation skills to other inmates inside New York's Green Haven prison, and even helped out doing secretarial work.
See,
His
look,
good
bro.
behavior made him eligible for parole 9 times, and during several of his parole hearings, he was told that if he just confessed, he could walk free.
Hell
Johnson
no,
clearly
bro.
had a backbone made out of pure steel.
You want me to
Each time,
lie on
he
myself
refused to
and tell you I
confess to a
did some
crime
shit
he
I
hadn't
didn't do?
committed.
Hell no.
Fortunately, his 9th parole hearing in 2014 was positive, and he was finally released.
Look,
When
bro.
you do the math, that means he had been in prison for almost 40 years, and all because he was wearing a tan jacket.
That's
Seems
crazy,
like New
bro.
York needs to upgrade its fashion police.
You can't stop people for wearing shit.
Soren Mathias.
Meaning that you just got to be
Denmark is
careful out
famous
here,
for
bro,
its
because
bicycle
the
culture,
same that you
its
got
colorful
on,
houses,
somebody else
and,
just
of
did a
course,
crime in that
Lego.
same
But
outfit,
it's
bro.
also the home of one of the longest,
For
oldest,
real.
and
I want you to
strangest
comment
jail sentences
to
in
let
the
me know.
world. Say
You know,
hello to Soren
how many people
Mathias.
you know
All the way
that
back
went
in
to jail
1876,
for somebody
his
else's
father
crime?
engaged in the services
Come
of
on. I
horse
notice a
dealer
lot of
Mills
y'all out there
Bogle.
know that,
He
man.
wanted to borrow money and also asked for his help finding a wealthy wife to marry. But the wife Soren ended up with clearly didn't come with a lot of cash, because when Bogelin came to collect the money he'd lent out, Soren couldn't pay. With substantial debts and no way to pay them, Soren decided his only way out was to eliminate Bogelin,
Look,
which was his
that's
biggest
crazy.
mistake by far. Soon after the deed was done, he was caught and ended up serving a life sentence of over 49 years with hard labor at the Horsen State Prison. As you can see, the years of grueling work took their toll, but he did somehow manage to keep the pounds packed on. This devious Dane was eventually released on parole in 1925, and hopefully he steered clear of horse dealers and bargain wives for the rest of his days.
95.
Betty Smithy. Women are just as capable as men, and that includes being horrendous criminals.
Yeah, you got women out here that do crimes too, but
Smithy,
you got a lot of
America's
women
longest
that's
serving
innocent.
female inmate.
A lot of people
In
that
1963,
women didn't do it,
Smithy
but
was convicted of taking the life of a minor and was sentenced to life in prison
Whoa.
without the possibility of parole.
She took a
In
life
her early
of a
years as an inmate, she managed to
innocent
escape 4 times
child,
from 3
bro.
different prisons. So either she was
She
a
needed to
regular
be
Houdini,
stuck in that
or those
mug,
female
for real.
penitentiaries were more insecure than your Facebook data. Nevertheless, over the years, Betty stopped trying to escape from prison and
and then
started
she tried to
trying
escape,
better herself.
bro. Like, that's
She enrolled in
crazy.
self-improvement courses, got her general education certificates, and even wrote a little poetry. But because Smithy was sentenced before 1973, the laws at the time dictated she could only become eligible for parole if the governor granted her clemency. For
Oh,
those of
what
us
the
that don't
hell,
speak
bro?
jail,
She killed
that
a
means
kid,
extending
bro.
mercy in the form of a sentence change. She applied in
What the-
2003 unsuccessfully, but in 2012 another appeal was granted and her sentence was cut to 49 years. Making her a
Wow.
free woman at 69 years old.
Never.
Maybe a little
You
late to
killed
start
the
really
kid,
living life
bro.
with
You-
something fun
you
like
did
skydiving, but at least she has 5
something
decades
that-
of great TV to catch up on.
Not right. And you let her
John
go?
Franzese.
Never.
In 1950, John Franzese was inducted into the Colombo crime family of
1950,
New York
bro.
City and quickly gained a terrifying
These the people that
reputation
live.
as one of the mafia's most fearsome thugs.
Your time,
But
my
despite
time,
claiming to have
in
flatlined
this
almost
generation
50
time
people,
and got
he was
out.
only convicted in
You feel me?
1967 of
Like,
masterminding a series of bank robberies across the country. I
Bro,
guess
they
the
would
police
hide
were
you
willing
in
to
the
take
prison.
whatever they could get by
They
that
would
point.
hide you
He
in
was
there,
charged
bro,
with a 50-year
from the
sentence,
world.
but was released on parole in 1978. Though on at least 6 occasions he returned to prison for parole violations. Then in 2011, and at the grand old age of 93, this granddaddy of crime was sentenced to a further 8 years in prison for extortion and loan sharking. He hit the ripe old age of 100 in 2017, and wrapping up his 8-year prison term, he was released from jail. In total, this
Wow.
mobster spent more than 40 years behind bars throughout his life, meaning he basically lived half a life of crime and half a life of jail time.
For real.
Sheldry Top. In 1958, and at just 13 years old, Sheldry
13
Top was
years old in
involuntarily committed
1958.
to a state hospital for some seriously destructive mental issues. He was treated with electroshock therapy, which even at the time was considered inhumane and torturous.
Yeah, that's
so it's
torture,
hardly
bro.
surprising
That's
that
out
in
of pocket. That was
1962,
torture.
Top ran away. But in his frenzied state, he wound up responsible for the death of an attorney in Oakland County, Michigan. At just
For-
17 years old, Top was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
Wow.
Despite being clinically diagnosed as a sociopath, Sheldry was held in a minimum security prison, which housed
Bet you
only
he
the
didn't
best
do it.
behaved inmates.
He an
Despite
innocent
this, he
kid,
never
too.
attempted to escape. Instead, he completed rehabilitation programs and multiple academic courses, all from behind bars. The years passed Sheldry by
Hey,
without hope of
you know,
freedom
like
until
I said, some
2012,
people
when
get
the
their life
Supreme
right in
Court
prison,
decided
some of us
sentencing
don't.
a minor to life in
You
prison
know?
without parole was unconstitutional. Sheldry was given a revised sentence with a 40-year minimum in 2019, and seeing as he'd already served a staggering 56 years, it meant he was immediately
Damn,
eligible
bro.
for freedom. Gaining the title of oldest juvenile prisoner serving a life sentence
Look
in
at
Michigan,
that, bro.
he walked free at the age of 74, having traded in his handcuffs for a
Oh.
walker.
Wow, bro.
Howard Christensen.
Look how
Back in
long that was,
1937,
bro.
16-year-old Howard Christensen was
crazy.
involved in a crime spree turned sour that resulted in the demise of a school teacher.
You can
Ada
tell by
Carey.
his face he was a
Christensen's act
psycho. He
shocked
was
the
a
state of
killer.
South Dakota, and after Howard
But-
received a life sentence, 3,000 people signed a petition demanding that the boy never be pardoned. The years behind bars brought out Christensen's crazy side, and he ended up spending 30 years on and off inside Yankton State Mental Facility. In the 1970s, his
Yeah,
sentence was
that's
revised,
crazy.
making him eligible for parole. Then in
Sheesh.
1995, due to his age and failing health, he was transferred to a nursing home. He died in 1999, age 79, having been institutionalized.
I just graduated
for
from the
just
5th
over
grade
58
when he
years
died,
before
bro.
his
Like,
final
that's
few years of
crazy.
freedom. For perspective, he'd spent almost 3 times as long on the inside than he had on the outside. That's almost as much time as a World of Warcraft international champion spends in his mom's basement, only with less Cheetos and Mountain Dew.
That's
Bill
crazy.
Wallace.
You
All
will
the way
never
back
know,
in
bro. That's why you ought to know
1926,
your
an
history out
Australian
here.
man named
Learn
Bill
your
Wallace
history.
was deemed
Get your
criminally
kids to know their
insane
history
for
out
a
here,
truly
man. 'Cause
bizarre reason. He was
prison
never formally convicted of
got
anything,
people in-
though it was,
in
let's
prison
say,
that
heavily
was
implied that
here
he shot a
when
man over an
dinosaurs was
argument
here,
about a
shit.
cigarette.
You feel me?
Reportedly,
They got
and this
people
isn't
still
a
in
joke,
prison.
He really hated smoking.
You know,
But when asked about
when
the
they
crime,
first
he point blank
built
refused to answer
prisons,
a single question.
they got people
This led
still in
two
there, bro.
doctors deeming him criminally
That's
insane
still
and
alive.
unfit to stand
That's
trial.
still
Instead, he was to be
walking,
held
talking.
indefinitely at Victoria's Ararat Lunatic Asylum.
That's
This meant
crazy.
he would only be released once the governor was convinced he was cured. But Wallace continued refusing to speak to the doctors about his crime. He remained in the institute for a staggering 63 years until he passed away there just a few days before his 108th birthday.
Wow.
Despite being there for the bulk of his life, technically, he was never sentenced for his alleged crimes. That's one bizarre way to beat the system. Charles
Damn.
Edred Ford.
He
In
was finna be
1952,
108.
Charles Edred Ford faced a trial that
Damn,
was stacked
bro.
against him from the start. His trial, in
I
which
wanna
he was
live that
accused of a
long.
fatal
Shit.
shooting,
Can I live that
involved an
long?
all-white jury in
Comment below
Maryland
if you wanna live
12 years before
180.
racial segregation in America ended.
Come
During
on
his
now.
trial, neither of his alibi witnesses were called to testify, both of whom could vouch that Ford was never at the scene of the crime. 2 witnesses that testified against Ford contradicted each other, but the attorney he was given wasn't even a trial lawyer, making him unable to adequately defend his client.
That's
Those factors
crazy, bro.
combined,
You got a
Ford
lawyer
ended up
that
receiving
can't fight for
life
you,
sentence. After
and
his
then you got
unfair
2
trial,
people that
Charles
vouched for you
maintained
that
his
said you
innocence,
wasn't at
but
the
ended up
crime,
serving over
but they couldn't get
64
there.
years in
Then 2
prison
people
before
that
his
say
case
you
was
did it
seriously reviewed in 2015.
couldn't even
With the evidence finally
be on the same
re-examined,
page,
his sentence
bro.
was vacated,
Come on.
meaning the verdict of his first
Send him
trial was
home.
overruled, having been
Everything
deemed a
is not
miscarriage
here.
of justice.
Send him
That said,
home.
he wasn't let completely off the hook, as his innocence couldn't be entirely proved beyond doubt. So instead of total freedom, he was transferred to a health center in Baltimore in 2016, having reached the impressive age of 86. 64 years is certainly a long time to
Hell
wait for
yeah.
only partial freedom. But judging by the tears of joy he reportedly shed upon learning of his transfer, Ford was just happy to have his case reassessed in a fairer light. But with his original trial's judgment being so
Look at
shady, do you think Ford
What
should
the
be
fuck?
compensated for all those years locked away? Or do you think there's no smoke without fire? Let me know in the comments below. Richard Honeck. In 1976, America celebrated its bicentennial. The 200th anniversary of the nation saw much celebration, but it was also the year that Richard Honeck passed away at the age of 97. Honeck had served what was at the time the longest prison sentence ever to end in a prisoner's release. He was jailed in 1899 for his role in the demise of Walter
1899,
Kohler,
bro.
which happened so long ago that they didn't print his photo in the paper. They used a
Wow.
drawing. Honeck spent the first 12 years of his life sentence at Joliet Correctional Center in Illinois, but that changed after he attacked a deputy warden with a DIY shiv. He received 20 days in solitary confinement before being moved to Menard
Bro,
Penitentiary, where he peacefully spent the final
1800,
35
bro.
years of his sentence, swapping shifts
What
for
the
baking gloves
hell?
as he worked in the prison's bakery. He spent a grand total
See,
of
that's what I'm
64
talking about,
years
but they don't talk
incarcerated
about none of
before
this
he was
stuff
granted
in school.
parole in 1963.
You know,
Despite his prison baking efforts,
you need to know
the
all
cake
your
you see here
history.
was probably
You
the
need to
first
know
decent
every
one he'd
history that
received
you
in
go
over
through.
6 decades.
You know,
But
this
when you take a
history
look
right
at his
here, bro,
first
this is
mugshot versus his
stuff
last,
that
that'd probably take
our
more than a
kids
few
and us
slices
used
of cake to
supposed
make
to
up for
know,
all
you
those
feel
lost
me?
years.
about certain things, you know,
Paul
in
Geithel
life.
Jr. When the aforementioned Richard Honeck was released from prison in 1963, Paul Guidel Jr. was more than 50 years into his life sentence for similarly violent crimes. And when Guidel Jr. was released in 1980, he surpassed Honeck's record by serving 68 years and 8 months in the can. At just 17 years old, Guidel attempted to rob an old man, but accidentally suffocated him with the chloroform rag he'd intended to knock him out with. Yeah, right. Accidentally. When caught, Guidel Jr.
that wasn't an
sentenced to
accident,
life
bro.
in
You
prison
did that
with
on
a 20-year
purpose.
minimum.
For real.
Although he became eligible
Like-
for parole in 1931, Guidel saw through the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and even the 1970s behind bars.
Damn.
He was finally offered parole in 1974, but having spent more of his life in prison than outside, he declined. Prison had sadly become his entire world.
See?
The outside world was alien and
Some
unfamiliar
people
to him
can't
now,
live in this
especially
world
considering his
that
old
been
age.
gone that
Before
long.
he could see the rest of his life pass
You
by
can't.
from inside
Come
his
on,
cage,
bro.
he
You
was
been gone
convinced to accept freedom in
since
1980. At that point, Guidel was
1800s or
86
something,
years
bro.
old.
And you
He'd
telling
spent
me
the best part of 7
2022
decades
you
paying
can
for
come
his
home
estate, and he lived out
and
his
you think
final
you
days
gonna
in
live in
nursing
this
home,
world?
which, if my grandma's
Bro, you
claims
gonna
are
try to
anything
make
go
another
by,
crime to
it's
go
even
back
worse
to
than that.
prison, bro.
Must have been a
Because
home
you don't
away
know
from
this
home for a
world.
lifelong jailbird like
Come
Guidel
on.
Jr.
You don't know this world, bro. The only thing you know is prison.
Johnson Van Dyke Grigsby. When Johnson Van Dyke Grigsby started his prison sentence in 1908, Theodore Roosevelt was the president, cellophane
Wow.
had just been invented, and the first ever Model T car was recently made. By the time
Damn.
Grigsby was released, email was being developed, Motorola was selling the world's first mobile phones,
Damn.
and the floppy disk had been invented. That's a huge chunk of history to have missed out on.
Hell
But
yeah.
for the crime of fatally injuring a man over a card game in a saloon, Grigsby pled guilty to second-degree murder to avoid the death penalty. He proceeded to serve a hefty 66 years in the Indiana State Prison. He appealed for clemency
Bro,
from
they
the
not
board a
playing,
grand
bro. They
total of
giving you,
33
boy,
times,
they
but
gonna
was
give you some
denied
numbers
every
out here in
last
these
request.
streets.
Although
Stop
he
playing with
reportedly
the
seemed
system like
elated to
that,
be
bro,
transferred
but-
to a nursing home in 1974,
You know,
his
a
almost
lot of things
90-year-old
in
smile
them
was
days
hiding
didn't
decades
have
of institutionalization.
the computers
He'd
they
become
got these
completely
days.
reliant
Didn't
on the
have
routine and systems of the prison, and after
the
spending
mob
time in
swabs.
that
They
Michigan
didn't
nursing
have
home,
all
he
that history or the
voluntarily
tests or
returned
the
to prison in
things that they got
1976.
now.
More evidence of just how
In them
bad nursing
times,
homes
bro.
really must be. Maybe my
And
grandma is
them
right
doing all
after
that time, then come home. It's like, damn, bro.
Joseph Ligon.
These days,
What
bro,
do you
you ain't
think
never
most
coming home.
15-year-olds spend their time doing these days? Playing Fortnite and making TikToks? Well, that's a world apart from what Joseph Ligon was doing at that age. Back in 1953, this juvenile delinquent was busy being sentenced to life in prison without parole. He and 5 of his friends had gotten drunk and decided to commit a series of robberies and a crime spree that left 8 men injured, 2 of them fatally. Ligon pleaded guilty
Look,
to his crime spree
that's
in
crazy,
Pennsylvania,
bro.
one of
Your
only
life can
6
be gone
states where
just
life
like
sentences
that,
for this
bro.
type of crime are imposed without
Just
the
because you
possibility
drunk
for
and you're not in your
parole.
right
At
mind.
the time, that meant the 15-year-old
feel
was
me?
essentially
Like-
sentenced to die in prison.
Wow.
The years passed without any light at the
15
end of the
years
tunnel
old,
for
and they
Ligon.
gave you
But between
life to
2012
die,
and
bro.
2016,
Your life
new
ain't
laws
been
dictated that
started
mandatory
yet, bro.
life
You still a
sentences without
kid.
parole for juveniles was unconstitutional. Ligon was offered parole in 2017, but just like Paul Guidel Jr., he declined. He rejected the proposed offer of supervised probation, asserting that if he couldn't be completely free of the justice system, he may as well just stay in jail. By that point, Ligon
That's
had become
crazy.
the world's oldest juvenile to serve life without parole. To this day, he's still behind bars, having served over 67 years in prison.
Damn, he's still in
Renee
prison to this
Lima.
day,
At
bro.
just 19 years old,
Come
Renee Lima
on.
Marin was heading down a dangerous path. In an
This
attempt
because
to
he
make a
didn't wanna
quick
be on
buck,
parole when
and
he
his
got
friend
out.
Michael Clifton robbed 2 video
Bro,
stores
stayed
at
in
gunpoint
there.
in
Like, bro, I don't
1998.
want to leave this
After their
mob.
getaway's
You
car's
gonna
license plate
you gonna have
number
to get
and
me
their
off parole
descriptions were given
first,
to the
then I
police,
leave.
the 2 were arrested.
That's
Lima was sentenced to a
crazy.
staggering total of 98 years in prison. That's a huge amount of time, seeing as no one was injured, let alone fatally. It turns out the prosecutor had dissected the robberies into a series of different actions, including kidnapping, as the pair had forced employees to move from one room to another. Added
That's
all
good.
together, the
That's
sentencing structure could have resulted in a 300-year sentence. So if anything, these guys got lucky. Even so, Lima was looking at a life behind bars. That was until 2008 when he was released on parole.
I
A
just
clerical
had my
error
first
in his
daughter in
paperwork
that
listed him
years.
as serving his sentences concurrently, all at the same time, not consecutively, meaning he could be released 9 decades early. Determined not to make the same mistake twice, Lima worked hard, started a family, and became a model citizen. But in 2014, the mistake was finally caught by the courts and Lima was rearrested.
Damn.
Fortunately, the judge in charge of his case saw the reincarceration as unjust, the ruling was overturned, and Rene was released for good in 2017. Proving how far he'd come, he even took steps to apologize face-to-face with one of the store clerks from that fateful night 20 years before. If you were in that clerk situation, would you have been able to forgive Lima after everything that happened?
I want y'all to
Let me know in
comment
the
below.
comments.
Can you forget a person that robbed you,
Chamoy TV
shot at
also.
you? Can you?
guess how many years the longest
Let me know.
prison sentence
Let
ever
Big Red
handed
know.
out was?
Comment below. I
200
want to know.
years? 1,000
Some of
years?
y'all can.
2,000
Not all
years?
of us.
Try 141,078 years.
What
It
the?
may sound insane, but that was the final number handed down to Chamoy back in 1989. She was the
Never.
wife of a high-ranking member of the Royal Thai Air Force and an employee of the Petroleum Authority for Thailand. For a sentence so severe, you can't help but imagine what unbelievable atrocities this woman
What
must
the
have
hell?
committed.
That's too
Did she
much
live in a
goddamn
skyscraper full
time,
of
bro.
orphans?
Like, what the
Was she
fuck?
responsible for the extinction of dinosaurs? Or did she kill Harambe? Not even close. The
Man.
crime she found herself wrapped up in was fraud. She was the head of a pyramid scheme that defrauded over 16,000 people and netted her more than $204 million. This hefty scheme
Shit.
threatened to undermine the entire Thai banking system, leading to the 100,000-year sentencing. However,
Whoa.
the Thai laws of the time specified that those convicted of fraud
She was
could
out
not
here.
serve more
She
than
was out
20
here
years in
getting her
prison,
bread.
rendering
She was
the
out here
sentencing
just.
unlawful. She was given a revised sentence
She was
and
just
was
out
released
here
after
doing the
only 8
most,
years.
y'all.
Now, that's
For
what you
real,
call
she
a
was out
lucky
here doing the
escape.
most on people. Hey, y'all, I'm gonna let y'all know right here, right now, man. I know you got some loved ones out there that's in prison that you haven't seen in 40 years, 50 years. What would you do if you had that much time and you couldn't do nothing about it? I want you to comment below, because it's people in prison that's innocent, that's doing 50 years, that been down 30, 50. Is you think it's right for these innocent people and they can't get a trial back, they can't get their life back, and they think because you found me innocent, you just gonna pay me out of money. Money, yeah, I do need money, but at the same time, that 50 years, 60 years, 100 years that I just did behind these walls, I ain't gonna never get back. I'm not gonna never get that back. Them 100 years, 50 years I did, it's still gonna be in my head because I was in prison. Anything that I talk about now, it's still gonna be about prison because I did all this time. I don't got history in the world. My history is in prison. And I know you out there that did 50 years and found out, oh, you was innocent. And you knew you was innocent the whole time. This is Big Red, and I'm talking to the streets. Peace.